We'll start with you, Mikhail. You were here first.
Well, New Zealand, the first light. We're the first country in the world to get the daylight of each day, so we're a little bit ahead of everybody else.
Yes.
I don't know whether that's good or bad, but that's the way it is. So yeah, I'm here in New Zealand in the northern part, looking right out over the Pacific Ocean. Yes, I'm actually here on behalf of my wife as well. So we did the summit together, and we have a workshop coming up at the end of October together. But my wife can't be here today. She's working. So I'm here on behalf of both of us to, just love learning and here to learn from one of the masters in the field, Gertrude. So thank you for having me here.
It's great to have you here. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Amy.
Hello. I am from Long Island, New York, so I am also attached to the water of the Atlantic Ocean. And I am a therapist, and I also work with children in foster care, and I connect them to people that have Medicaid, and I connect them to health services and try to kind of create their hierarchy of needs and build up around them.
Wonderful. Good to have you here. Manuel, we had fun yesterday. How are you this morning?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Gertrude. You look gorgeous today.
Thank you.
Seriously, I love your colors. I feel a little bit underdressed for this meeting today. So next week we'll have to make an effort, definitely. So hi everyone, my name is Manuela. I live in New Zealand. I live here in Auckland, originally from Spain, and I am a health and transformational coach. I work with women. I help women to create a new life they love especially after divorce or separation. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Awesome. Fantastic. We'll give it one more minute, then we'll get started. Today, I really wanted to get to know you guys, to pick your brains and find out why you're here. First of all, kudos for showing up. Not everybody is called to speak. And those who are called to speak, not everybody takes action. So there is something in you that has got you here. And now you're investing your time in trying to perfect your craft. I always say to people, speaking is like playing a musical instrument. You'll never meet a saxophone player who just got up on stage and started playing. It's hours and hours and hours of practicing the craft and showing up and training and really getting to get clear what it is you stand for. What I'm hoping to achieve out of this group is to create thought leaders, to work with people who are really laser clear on why they're on this planet, what their message is going to be, and what difference they're going to make in the world through their stories. So, Mikhail, we'll start with you, just in a few sentences. What is it that you stand for? If I was to ask you one thing, if I was to Google to find your name, what would that be?
I stand for transformation. I do not stand for change. I see a world where we keep changing things and it's not working. For me, change is just not cutting it. We have to go much deeper and create transformation.
And so what does transformation mean for you? I'm wanting, just so I can explain where this is going. If somebody was trying to find you, trying to find your services, trying to find your skills, and they're typing in a search engine to find you, transformation is very broad. Can you narrow it down a little bit more?
It's reconnecting with, or discovering, whatever word is the right word, with the natural wisdom that we all have. as a natural part of us. It's that natural intelligence, that natural intuition that we're all born with, that it, as far as I can see in the world, we have lost that. We've lost the connection with that. So for people who are searching for that, I'm not sure what the language is, Gertrude. This is a part that I'm not good at. I'm good at the actual work,
Yes.
like most other coaches, but I'm not good at putting, which is why I pay people to do that for me.
But you're still going to have to articulate to those people what
and
you're
I do
hearing
that.
and what you know is in your head, right?
Yeah. So I get that it's reconnecting with that, or refinding that natural, let's call it wisdom or natural intelligence that that we're all born with.
Yes.
And
okay.
that it seems to me that we've lost. I mean, I definitely lost it, and I'm still on the journey of rediscovering it. I think that'll be a lifetime journey.
Yes. Okay, no, that's cool. It's really good to have clarity yourself, even if you're going to hire a marketing team or professionals who are going to help you, just having clarity yourself in terms of what that is and being really succinct. Amy, what would you say in a few sentences is your reason for being, the reason why you want to speak?
So I discovered about 2 years ago, maybe 3, that I had PTSD after not knowing that I had it. So I was able to introspect, and 1.5 years later, I completely healed myself without therapy, just using the tools that I was taught in graduate school. So I believe that we all have the power to heal ourselves from trauma. And it's just about finding what works for you and being aware of yourself. And then you can use that power to transform your voice into being more authentic and healing from all of the past and finding the root causes.
Wonderful. So you've got a real niche, very, very easy for somebody to go on Google, type in PTSD, find somebody who could help them or listen to your presentation, and hopefully that will shine some light. Manuela, in a sentence, and welcome, Jane Miller. Welcome to the call. We're just going around the room, getting to know each other. So I'll ask you to introduce yourself in a second.
So for me, would be to empowering women to find their voice, the truth, and the power, to unleash their power.
Okay, nice. Jay, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself? Just tell us where you're based, and in a sentence, what is your presentation about? Why are you called to speak? If I was to say somebody's in Google trying to find your kind of content, what are the keywords they would type in a search engine to find you?
Honestly, I have spoken a lot in the past. I'm working on a private performance-based fund right now. So I suppose what people would be looking me up for would be retirement freedom or legacy or generational wealth.
Nice. Again, very succinct and to the point. So in this program, what I'm trying to do is to really help you guys think of yourself as thought leaders so that you have a central pillar to everything you do that you can hinge your content. I stumbled upon my niche by accident. I had moved to New Zealand 21 years ago and wrote a book. I self-published a book. And it was in the search for a unique book title that I wrapped my personal life story around an African philosophy called Ubuntu. Thank you, Jane. You're in North Florida, US. Wonderful. And so my book is called Born on the Continent, Ubuntu. And I used the Ubuntu philosophy because I knew a lot of people thought Ubuntu is just a piece of software by Linux. If you Google the word, you won't find its original meaning. So there's been a lot of misappropriation of African content, words that are taken and used and never acknowledged. And so I thought, I'm going to grab this word back. I was very fortunate in the timing of it as well, because it was at a time where a lot of global leaders were starting to talk about it. I saw Desmond Tutu, a South African theologist, talking about it. Bill Clinton at the time did a talk about Ubuntu, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to grab this word and own it. It created a 21-year speaking career for me, and I've been able to talk about it in business, in leadership, in community. It touches on all kinds of facets of life, and if you see all 3 of my TED Talks, they hinge around one subject. Now, why am I saying this? A lot of times people step onto the stage, decide to be speakers without a level of clarity of what they're going to be known for. Now, it doesn't matter whether you want to do a TED Talk or you are talking in the corporate world. When people start making the decision to hire you, they want to see that you embody your message. They want to see videos of you online. They want to see your blogs. You need to create a digital footprint for yourself so that you are the expert in whatever it is you're going to be speaking on. Now, becoming an authority on any subject means that you have either lived the experience like you, Amy. This is something that you know because you've gone through it and you've experienced PTSD. You don't have to have a degree. I ended up finding myself being hired by a billionaire family in Pittsburgh. So I come to the US a lot. At that time, the highest I'd been paid as a keynote speaker in New Zealand was $3,000 an hour. The highest in Australia was $7.5. And I thought that was pretty good. The next thing I know, the Rooney family in Pittsburgh, who owned the football team called the Steelers, found me through my YouTube video on the first TED Talk called Born on the Continent, Ubuntu. And Mrs. Rooney was a professor at a private university. And when she retired, she created a position called the Rooney International Scholar. And they were looking for philosophers, musicians, artists, interesting people to come and lecture at this university. It was a 6-month contract. I lectured 2 hours a week. I was paid $10,000 a week. They gave me a fully furnished 5-bedroomed house, a car. I actually wrote my second book while I was there because I had so much time. But what was a memoir transitioned into an academic textbook. I've since lectured in over 15 universities around the world because of that experience. So how can your content be repurposed and positioned in different places? Like I said, a lot of what happened to me was accidental, but you can create this for yourself if you're aware of how to position your content in different aspects. Now, Mikhail, I know when I met you and your wife and we started talking about your content, it was quite fascinating what you have managed to do as a couple personally. You have a very universal message around your content with couples and people learning to stay together, avoiding divorce. Divorce is very, very high right now. Same with you, Manuela. You have a universal subject, those people who are surviving divorce and reinventing themselves afterwards. And Jane, it sounds to me like you have a universal piece of content as well. So I'm speaking as if the people who haven't made this call can tune into this as well. Think about your content and how you can make it universal. And even if you can't make it universal, how can people relate to it from other cultures, from other languages? Ubuntu is a very African philosophy, but it's a philosophy about life. So it can relate to anybody, anywhere in the world. So let's think about how to refine that message. You know, when you start presenting, sometimes you get an opportunity to say it in 3 minutes. Sometimes it's in 5. Sometimes it's in 10, it's 15, it's 1 hour. How can you stretch one piece of content and hold people from beginning to end? Now, with any presentation, there is what's called the arch of a story. Every story has got 3 parts to it. It must have a clear beginning, it must have something in the middle, and it has to have something at the end. They say that people will remember the first thing that you say. The first words that come out of your mouth are absolutely pivotal. Unless you can say something that sucks me into your content, into your story immediately, I will forget the rest of it. People will also remember the last thing you say. So it's the first thing, it's the last thing. The other thing about speaking is how you look. Manuela, you commented on how I look. I do this every day. I put on my face, I put on my makeup. I love colorful clothes. It's how you're showing up physically. So you're giving people a sound bite by the first words you say, and you give people a visual bite by how you look. Make it memorable. You know, it could be that you're wearing your black jacket right now, Manuel, but you throw on a scarf, a bright colored scarf. It could be a pin. It could be a pair of earrings, just something that makes people remember who you are. So how you look and the first things you say. The last part of your speech is what's called your call to action. This is now the summary of the presentation, action steps, things that people can do to implement your ideas. You could create an acronym. It could be 5 steps to overcoming PTSD. Give people something that they can take home and execute when they hear you speak. And keep it simple. Really dumb it down so that anybody can run with it. It has to be at the level of an 8-year-old. So don't overcomplicate it. The middle part of your speech is all of your ideas. It's all of the ups and downs of your life, if it's a life story. And we will be talking about a timeline in a few minutes. It's all of the conflicts, the things that have gone right, the things that have gone wrong. The middle part of your speech is really based on how you make people feel. They'll remember how you made them feel in the middle section. So the first section, they'll remember the first words. The last section, they'll remember how to execute. And in the middle, it's how do you make people feel? Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question, and you can just, since we're such a small group, chime in here. Who do you think is the hero of your story or of your presentation? We'll just go around the room again. Anyone?
In my case, myself.
Okay. Amy?
And the women, you know, the closest women in my family, you know, my mom, my grandmother.
Okay. Amy, what do you think? Who's the hero of your presentation or your speech?
That would be 2 answers. So myself and my connection to God or source.
Okay. Mikhail, who do you think is the hero of your presentation?
It's a very good question. I was sort of popping around in my head. I think in reality, it's the audience.
Okay.
Like it's those in the audience that are connecting with my story.
And Jane, who do you think is the hero of your story or your speech?
The hero of my story is my grandfather. He had a prosperity mindset, and I just want to take what he did in a small town to a global scale.
Okay. The answer is what Mikhail said. Your audience are the heroes. Unless they can see themselves in your story, you're not really going to be getting through to them. So you are showing up as the Yoda, as the wise sage, as the person who has lived it, has breathed it, has experienced it. And Jane, for you, your grandfather is the Yoda. Same thing with you, Manuela, because you've lived this, you've breathed it, you've gone through it. And until the person who's listening can hear themselves through your story, you don't really have them. They have to picture themselves in your shoes, being able to do what you've done. So if you look at Disney's Pixar stories, the hero stories, think about the Toy Story. The hero is not the main character. It's the people who are tuning into the main character's story. They have to see a reflection of themselves through you. So in the telling of the speech, remember that, have that in the back of your mind. I'll tell you what happened with my first TED Talk. It was a great presentation, but I failed to be human. I thought, okay, I've got 15 minutes. I've got to pack in all of the things I've managed to achieve. So if you can take the time to watch my 3 TED presentations, I think the last one is the best. In the first one, I packed in everything I was doing at that time, the things I was doing to make a difference in Africa, to make a difference in my community, with the people in my life, to a point where I came off like this superhero, and I didn't touch on all of the things that had gone wrong in my life. I focused on all of the positive things, because I always tell myself I'm a positive person. I don't like focusing on all of the things that have gone wrong. But there were a lot of things that went wrong in my life at that time. When I realized this, I interviewed a few people who were experts. I started interviewing people who organized TED Talks and started getting some feedback. And that's the message that I got back, that I didn't sound believable. How can one person do all of these things? I did do them, but with a lot of things that went wrong in between. So it's when you start sharing the things that went right and the things that went wrong, that it becomes more believable, that the person who's listening can actually hear their story through your story. Does that make sense? So your listener is the hero. If they can hear what you're saying and get home and say, I went to the most amazing presentation today, this is what I'm going to do next, you have been effective as a presenter. So again, I'm just going to go around the room and let's just talk about who is your niche, who is the target market for your presentation? Anyone?
I'm happy to start. So for me and my wife, it is couples. So we don't want to work with individuals. I'm already doing that myself. So we want to work with couples who have been together for more than 7 years and ideally have children, because that is our experience and they are the people that we feel we can help the most. So couples who have been together for a while and come to maybe a place of being either a bit bored with it or a bit stuck and not quite sure how to move forward from where they're currently at.
Okay, nice. Anyone? Just keep going.
I guess mine would be women overcoming sexual trauma and family dynamic trauma.
Okay, so that nice niche. Any particular age group? Mikhail's is quite clear because people who've been in relationships are probably in that middle to later part of their lives. Do you have a particular age group?
I would say like 21 plus.
21 plus,
where,
okay.
Yeah, this where they had some separation from their family and they have more control over their environments.
Okay. Manuel?
My target would be women from the 40s to mid 50s, so early 40s to mid 50s, who are facing a crossroad and uncertainty in their lives, facing divorce or separation.
Nice. And Jay, who's your target market?
My target market are accredited investors that may not be aware that they have become accredited and they're not fully aware of all the financial alternatives available to them for investment.
Okay, so it's men, women of a certain age group?
Well, usually they're boomers, but people are becoming millionaires at 30 now, and they're still not financially savvy. They're scared because they have accumulated a certain amount of money and they know they're not utilizing it wisely.
Okay. Now, the reason why I asked that question again is a lot of people go into the presentation world without being clear who they're speaking to. The narrower your target market, the more effective you're going to be. So Amy, if you can decide that it's going to be 21 to 35, you're going to be more effective than when you leave it 21 plus. Now, I'm saying this because when you start putting together your marketing copy, the language you will use for someone from the age of 21 to 35 is going to be different from someone from 35 to 45 and over. Does that make sense? And the platforms you're going to use to advertise to get them is going to be different as well. So like Mikhail's demographic, you probably will find them more on Facebook, maybe LinkedIn than anywhere else. Amy, you might be working on Instagram. So it'll help you decide where you're going to put your marketing dollars to attract the people that you want to try and bring into your circle. Does that make sense? And when you do decide to do this, creating community, and that's what I'm trying to do with a group that I've just added you to. Creating community makes you so much more effective. I remember when I started coaching people to write books, when Facebook was still Facebook and you could still get through to people with a closed group, I had people in 30 different countries in a group. And it got to a point where if I was sleeping in New Zealand and somebody had a question and they were stuck, they could post a question in the group and somebody in the group who had talked to me before and I'd given them an answer to that particular question would respond. So creating your own community around your content is going to be crucial going forwards, because you're not always going to be there for people. You're not able to be there 24 hours a day. So start really thinking about bringing people together in a community. And the more intimate your community is when you're starting, the more effective you're going to be. Like I literally handpicked out of the people that I added to the group, probably 300 people, knowing that I'll probably get 100 who would respond. And that's exactly what's happened. And I will work with a smaller, more intimate group to start off with. Get to really know everybody on a personal level, because what I'm hoping is that out of this first 100 people, you'll give me great testimonials. You've got to experience me very intimately. Getting a video testimonial from somebody you've worked with one-on-one is worth its price in marketing dollars than throwing money at Facebook or Instagram. Because the first 100 people can tell 10 friends, and before you know it, your community has grown to 1,000. And if the 1,000 tell 10 friends, now you've got 10,000. If they tell 10 friends, it's 100,000. They tell 10 friends, you've got 1 million people connected. So I work on that 10 by 10 by 10 principle. That is the first 10 people who will make you successful. Now, in growing your community, you must remember that your content, whatever it is you are up to as a speaker, is literally generating or creating what I like to call a movement. In all of what we're doing right now, you are tribal leaders. And the tribal leader has to be able to tell a compelling story that really gets through to people. Because the people who come on board and join you are now part of your tribe. They're going to take your message, implement it, spread it, maybe create their own tribe. And that's what I'm trying to do with you guys. And I'm sharing with you all of the things that I'm doing so that you have the tools to move your business forward, to create your own communities and grow your own tribes as well. So I'm going to stop at this point because the way I'm building this course is going to be built on you, my tribe, my community, asking me the questions so I deliver what I call appropriate content. A lot of times people create courses based on what they know to a point where they miss the gaps of what their customers, their community needs to know. So I'm going to open up the floor now for you guys to ask me very specific questions, things that you're either struggling with in terms of building your business, putting together your speech. Where can I be of service to you? Because at the end of the day, you'll be so close to your content, you can't see the gaps. You have this tunnel vision. And when you develop a program, develop a speech based on questions that people have asked you, you will nail it. You will deliver 100%. Amy, you sound like you want to say something.
Well, this is the very first start of the journey. So I'm not really sure what questions I have. I just want to be a giant sponge and absorb all of your teachings. And I'm really grateful for this experience. And I appreciate the feedback. I was thinking that my age range would be probably like late 30s to early 40s, since like that was the age that I healed from the PTSD.
Okay, that's really nice. And, you know, in making that decision, I'll tell you how I hit upon my avatar. I had a client. So I've been working with people different age groups. And when I was going into my coaching business, I had a client from Australia. This woman was 57 years old, had gone through a divorce, sold everything she owned, packed a suitcase and moved to live in China and was teaching English. Her name was Tuva Vine. And when she told me her story, it was incredible. I met her 10 years after she had done this. And what I loved about Tuva was her level of clarity. She wanted to share her story, no doubt about that. I saw 3 books in her, not one. And she was like you, Amy. She was like a sponge, just open to absorb, open to learn, open to be guided. And I said to her, Tuva, I am actually seeing more than one book in you. Do you mind if I share what I'm seeing? Because sometimes I show up like a mirror, just reflecting back to people what they don't see in themselves, and I share. And I said to her, why don't you split up your story into 3 separate books? Because people are not consuming content very easily these days. You know, if you write a 900-page book, nobody's going to read it. But if you write 3 separate books, 300 pages each, is going to be more effective. And the other thing about breaking up her content was the people who buy the first book want to know what happened next. They'll buy the second, they'll buy the third. So we split up her 10-year journey into 3 books. The first book was called TIC, T-I-C, and the acronym stood for This is China. And it's what people say when you move to China and you experience, you know, culture shock. People say, look, get over it. This is China. You're not in Europe. You're not in New Zealand. You're not in Australia. This is China. So she wrote about the culture shock of moving to a new country. The next book was called MAD, M-A-D. And MAD stood for Making a Difference in China. So she wrote about all of her work. She ended up creating her own English school in the next 10 years and traveling all over Southeast Asia, supporting little children in orphanages, and she was sponsoring little girls in orphanages. So she was making a difference. The third book was called GAP, G-A-P, and GAP stood for Get a Purpose. She found her life purpose by traveling throughout Southeast Asia, making a difference in these children's lives. And GAP actually ended up turning into a coaching program that I recommended she starts, where she started coaching other women who've gone through a divorce to travel and see the world. And the pun was on the gap year as well. So they would pack their suitcases and she coached and mentored them to transition. What I loved about Tuva was that she was technophobic. She didn't like computers. I love computers. She outsourced everything in terms of her social media, her marketing to me. So I set her up, and I actually ended up ghostwriting all 3 books. Out of one client, I think in the 2 years I worked with her, I generated well over $180,000 by helping this woman. And she made almost $700,000 from the books, from the coaching program. For me, she was decisive. She didn't need to consult a husband or a partner to make any of the financial decisions. She had the stories. So I decided women over 50 were my target market. They have the stories and they want to share. So getting that level of clarity in terms of who you want to play with. And then what I ended up finding is I was using Facebook to market. These women would bring their daughters to me, they'll bring their granddaughters. So I didn't have to advertise to the younger demographic. And when I posted anything on Facebook, it went out on Instagram, I was attracting the younger women as well. So just getting that laser clarity. So Manuela, what questions have come up for you up until this point?
Hi, Hedred. For me, it's all about being of service. So understanding, I'm listening to you, and for me, it's all about being of service to these women. So understanding, the more I understand the pains and the needs, then the more I can get in tune with that. So I don't know, in terms of the question, I mean, like, there's so many things that you could help us, right? Just listening to you is really inspiring, the way that you communicate, the way you connect with us, to be able to translate that, to be able to translate our story, and any advice that you could give us, to as I said, to put it in paper, to be able to, because I think connecting with your body language, connecting with our, with our eyes, with our voice, is maybe easier, to some extent, than to connecting in paper, right? Writing our story. So it's a different, yes. So maybe some guidance or some support around that. What to do? Where do we start? Trying to connect with that audience, writing, what would be your advice? Maybe contributing to small publications in our local community, maybe reaching out to, I don't know. There's so many possibilities that.
There's numerous possibilities,
Yes.
Being of service and offering free webinars is one of the most effective ways for you to connect with people.
Yeah.
It will look and feel as if you are putting in a lot of time in the beginning. When I created my coaching business for authors, I said, I'm looking for 100 people to coach for 90 days for free. And I would show up at 10 o'clock every morning. I had no content. I didn't know how to coach them. I just knew how to write books. But I would get them to come online. And before they came, they emailed me questions, things they wanted to know. And in that webinar, I would answer those questions. This is why I'm saying, when you go to market, you go to your clients and get them to ask you questions before you create a program, you're going to deliver the most appropriate content. Does that make sense? Yeah. So although these people didn't pay me anything, they all bought the course at the end when I packaged it and turned it into a video course, because they really wanted this content. I nailed it. I hit on all of their pain points. So it's in understanding the pain points of your client and how you can be of their service to them. So that, I think, would be a really good starting point for your kind of content, is just put it out there through Facebook, through all of the Facebook groups. There's hundreds of Facebook groups around divorce. Look for them, join them, and then just say, hey, I'm having a free webinar for women who've just gone through a divorce or who have been divorced and are looking to move on with their lives if you're stuck. That's what I would do with your kind of thing.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Because
out of that webinar, now you've got the questions. Now you can build the content that can help support your business and support your speaking and your presentation as well. And then when it comes to the actual sharing of your presentation, you have lived and breathed this. You know, I know you a little bit, so I know a bit of your story. The way you shared it yesterday when we did that interview, that's where you need to speak from. People connect with me because whenever I show up, this is me on any day. I don't perfect my speech so that it's perfect from word to word. I just speak as authentically as I can. I make mistakes. English is not my first language, so forgive me if I do make a mistake, but it's just showing up and being real every single day. That's what people connect with. That's what people buy into when you're authentic. That authenticity is what does it.
Beautiful.
So have fun with it. And I'd really love to be able to support you along this journey, because I know what you're sitting on is gold at the moment. A lot of people get stuck when they get to this point in their lives.
Yes. Thank you, Hetra.
So before I jump to you, Mikhail, I'll go to you, Jane. Any questions, any comments, anything that can be of value that I should be focused on when we have these meetings?
Thank you very much. When you're, a TED Talk is kind of a big deal. And in all of what you've explained so far in your journey, like I work on real estate projects, but some of the things that you say, and it's really for people to recognize you as an authority rather than holding anyone accountable for your material or anything you created. But I'm sure at some point in your journey, there's been more than one piece of intellectual property. So how does that evolve, and when do you actually make it intellectual property, if that applies?
It does apply. And I'll tell you one quick and easy instant way to own your intellectual property is by writing a book. Because once you've written down those thoughts, a lot of people don't realize that writing a memoir or a personal book or a business book is owning your intellectual IP. I say to people that your story is your intellectual IP. Everything you've lived through is yours. And once you put it down on paper, it's instant. It becomes yours. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I would say that would be a good starting point. When I started coaching people to write books, I go to the Frankfurt Book Fair every year, and I show people how to repurpose their stories. And a story is not just a story. You've been in real estate for so many years. Everything you have learned, everything can be taught. You can turn that personal story into a board game. You look at Robert Kiyosaki's board game. That is a personal story of how he created his real estate empire, right? You look at turning it into a video course, a webinar series. That is a business piece of content that has been repurposed. Once you've written a book, you can get it translated into multiple languages. Again, especially if you have a universal message. You can sell it for its movie rights. So you're probably sitting on something that is so pivotal and that can help. I like the fact that you've identified the baby boomers and the younger millionaires that are coming up. A lot of these kids, these YouTubers, are making millions of dollars and they have no idea how to handle that money. So you've probably got two very distinct niches that you need to be servicing. I would pick the first one and focus on it, and then move on to the next one once you've built the first one to a point where you're happy with it. Does that answer your question, Jane?
Yes, but by the first one, do you mean just pick one and focus on it as opposed to one over the other?
Start with one so that you have laser focus, and then move to the next one, because they are two very distinct demographics. The way you're going to appeal to these younger millionaires is going to be different to the baby boomers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But part of I feel like I should work on the older generation first, because their time is more limited, or that's, what we believe. People can go at any time, but It's about creating an environment where they can live even longer. And the younger generation isn't as much concerned with that, though I have references and people that for them to send to them and referrals, so that I'm not really turning anyone away, but the environments are tailored so that the people can be on properties, live on properties, and have a better quality of life, and therefore live longer because their finances are secure and they're in an ideal environment. And the younger generation is going to come and learn on those properties and attend events on those properties. So they'll be able to, coexist, but not necessarily intermingle, because the properties are resort spaces and they're large acreages, so they're separated, but it does serve both. But I understand your point, but I do want to focus on the older generation to get the properties established, and then it's going to attract the other generation anyway.
Yes. And you did talk about legacy and generational wealth. I think if you start with the older demographic, you're going to service the younger demographic at the same time. So the other thing that I forgot to touch on is the 33% rule to everything you're going to do going forwards. And welcome, Boucher. I have recorded this. I know you came in late. I will post the recording in the group so you can watch it. Just type in the chat where you're based. Welcome to the webinar. The 33% rule is that 33% of people are going to love everything you put out. It doesn't matter what you say, they will love you because they rarely hear your message. 33% of people are going to be indifferent. They're just not concerned. It's got nothing to do with them. And 33% are going to hate you. So be prepared for the haters. Manuela, this one is for you in particular. Now, I'm a happily divorced person. You will be surprised at how many people hate me for being happy. People saying, oh, you should have tried harder. People don't realize that I almost committed suicide because of the situation I was in. My mental health wasn't well. I left to save my own life. You're going to get people like that who will judge you. I mean, we talked about it briefly.
It's a very interesting point, absolutely. Because in one hand, people, if you come across as miserable, if you come across as showing all that pain that you're carrying, you may be able to resonate very strongly with the certain part of the population. If you come across as too fabulous, you may alienate people that maybe carry insecurities or they're not prepared to. Yes, it's a very interesting one.
It is. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, my partner, my ex, and I are good friends. He was my soulmate. I thought I would die with that man. And when it got to the point where I started to hate him is when I left. And now you should have seen us at our wedding. And when my daughter got married, people were like, are you guys really divorced? And we are good friends. We will be friends for the rest of our lives. But we just had to move on and do different things. So be prepared for the haters. I've had people attack me on YouTube around Ubuntu. IT geeks who have no idea where the word came from, saying, this is not a piece of Linux software. What the fuck is she talking about? And they just don't know that the software was based on this African philosophy. So I've been attacked by people on YouTube.
No.
For tying the Ubuntu philosophy to a piece of Linux software. They don't realize it's the other way around. So be prepared for the haters. Mikhail, anything from you?
Well, first of all, thank you. I love learning, and it's fantastic being here and listening to you with your experience. Fortunately, I'm already a public speaker and been doing it for many years, but only on the side. So I can relate to this. So for me, this is a journey together with my wife. So there's kind of two questions that are sitting there for me. And like for us, is looking at like, what is it? How are we going to focus on this being two? It's like two people on stage instead of one, because when I go on stage, I can just go and do what I want. I only have to just focus on me.
Yes.
So when we recorded for your summit, man, that was a very, the fact that we didn't get divorced during that was quite an achievement. Of going through that, but we're so glad we had that opportunity to go through that and learn from it. So, anything around the difference between one person on stage and two would be one aspect that we are interested in. The other aspect is that at the moment, there is no public speaking possible in New Zealand, and hasn't been for a year and a half. So I haven't done any public speaking for a year and a half, and that's okay. But how in this environment do we get ready for when it opens up, or how do we take our public speaking online? And you sort of talked about webinars and that. So anything else around how in the current environment where we can't travel and we can't show up and we can't get people gathered in physical places, anything around that would be really useful, I think.
This is going to be the new norm for a long time. I think any public speaker needs to realize this and realize that the online platform is the space. So we're going to have to be presenting from our homes online for a very long time. I would recommend, if I were you, to create your own events, create your own summits, online summits. What I loved about you and your wife and the way you put that presentation together, the reason why I've created Her Story is to give people the opportunity to practice, to keep showing up at our events. We are doing an event every other month. So like we had the one that you did, Mikhail, in September. In October, we're running workshops. We're having another one in November. In December, we run workshops. So every other month, I am running online events and giving people the opportunity to present, the opportunity to practice and grow their skills and their networks as well. So if I were you, I would start running my own online seminars for couples. There is power in creating your own events. Amy, PTSD is a big thing right now. It is huge. There are people who are suffering in their homes without an outlet. There is a massive opportunity. And the other thing that we all have to remember is that the world is flat right now because of what's happened with COVID. It doesn't matter what part of the world you are in, you can have a global reach. You just have to decide you want it. Now, I'm going to be sharing case studies, and I'm glad you brought up, the fact that you are presenting with your wife. Part of what I'm doing with my coaching is I'll be giving you case studies. So I'll give you a few case studies, Mikhail, of people that I've seen who have just blown me away, who've presented together. It's almost as if the yin and yang of your relationship with your wife will be showing up on stage. And you will be presenting either seamlessly, like you are one person, just having two different views. You're going to have to dance with this for a while. It's going to be like, learning the tango, but you can have a lot of fun with it. I'll share some of the case studies. So I live and breathe TED. I am on TED every morning, and I recommend all of you do the same thing. I look for inspiration from people who've done it before. So I'll be sharing case studies. So if any of you have something specific you are looking for, ask me. I probably know 2, 3, 4 other people who have presented in a way that's quite impressive. So I'll share with you, Mikhail, some of the case studies of people who've done a really good job. I don't know if you saw the mother and son who did the presentation for the summit, the little boy, the little 8-year-old boy. So we had an 8-year-old boy from the US who presented. He did a piece on his own, and then we interviewed him with his mom at the end. I'll send you the link to that presentation as well. They've kind of worked out. It's almost as if the mother will say something and the boy will finish off the sentence, and vice versa. So there are ways of presenting in a very eloquent way when you are two presenters at the same time. So our time is up. We've gone over our 30 minutes, but this was great because I really wanted to get to know everybody. I wanted to get a feel. Email me any questions so that when we do the next one, I can incorporate those questions in the next webinar. Sound good? And for those of you who have paid for the full program, Mikhail, it's now coming this week, the next module, and I'm going to be putting it into this, the people who have paid have got access to the further program. And those of you who want to know more about the paid program, please let me know. I'll email you the links, and then you can get involved in getting more content. So this series is going to be 3 separate webinars that you will get for free, and then you can make a decision whether you want to buy into the coaching program or not. So thank you so much, everybody. Ushenkosi, I will post the replay and put it in the group so that you can watch it from the beginning. And again, ask me questions. Amy, I'm looking forward to seeing how we can work together. Same with you,
Yeah,
Jane.
likewise.
You've got something really magical there. The baby boomers are needing help on how to create that generational wealth and hold on to their properties, because I know it's a big thing in the United States as well. Email me questions, everybody. Post them in the group. I'm paying attention to everything you're posting in the group. And use the group to get feedback. So if you want to practice a speech, record it, upload it to YouTube, throw that link into the group, get the other speakers to give you feedback. That's another great way to practice. And I'm looking for speakers for the next summit. Go onto the website, theherstorycircle.com, register. I still have a few slots for this month, for the month of October. Have a good day, everybody. Welcome to the Her Story Speakers platform.
Thank you.
Bye.